Hi, everyone, and welcome to an installment of Day in the Life. This is where we have guests featured on the NGR YouTube channel and break down what their life is like in their rail preservation or industry related job to elevate fresh perspectives and fresh ideas. My name is Glenn Holland. I'm one of the board members at Next Generation Railroaders, and today I'm joined by Noah Noyes, who is also a board member here, and we'll be talking to him today about what his life is like in the industry.
Yeah, thanks so much, Glenn. Thanks for having me, and welcome to everybody that's joining us. My name is Noah Noyes, like Glenn said, and I'm also a board member at NGR, Next Generation Railroaders. And then in my day life, I'm a full-time career railroader. I work on shortline hauling freight, and so I'm triple qualified in that role as a locomotive engineer, freight conductor, and also a dispatcher on the side. So sort of a utility guy on a short line railroad, and that's how I spend my time during the week.
Excellent. You actually answered one of the questions already. I was just going to ask what triple qualified meant, but you already explained that right off the bat. So awesome. We're off to a good start. So yeah, Noah, what does your typical day look like? You mentioned you serve three different roles at different times. So do you kind of switch out between them, or do you kind of go through more periods of one versus the other? What does it look like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it sort of over time in the last 4 years or so, I've been railroading. It's varied. I've been conductor full time primarily, working various shifts, different jobs around the railroad. Relief dispatcher. So that's not my primary job. I typically fill in vacations or openings. It's a small company, and so those things come up. And then for about the last 2 years, primarily been a locomotive engineer full time, working on a fairly regular job on our short line. So Monday through Friday, sort of 8 a.m. start time. But primarily engineering these days, and that was sort of an evolution from getting qualified as an engineer after working as a conductor for several years.
That makes a lot of sense. That's a really good snapshot, I guess you could call it. So, mostly working as an engineer these days, as you said, for your short line. So, could you talk to us a little bit about what the specifics of operating or working for a short line is? Because there's, as I understand, a big difference between Class 1 and short line operations.
I think Class 1 railroads have a little bit different business model, certainly a different sort of lifestyle and schedule. On the short line side of things, I think the strength of short lines is typically customer service. That's true of where I work. We're very sort of customer centric. And so typical day for us is, starting at 8 a.m., we get our paperwork and get on the train, do our daily tasks, inspections, brake tests, things like that. And then the rest of our day is primarily spent shuttling back and forth between customers and switching customers, spotting cars, pulling cars, and then bringing the train back to the terminal. So one of the differences on a short line is, we're not covering a lot of ground necessarily. I may only run 20 miles in a day, but between the customer work and sorting out cars, that can take a full 8 or 9 hours. So it's not really an over the road job like getting on an intermodal train and cruising from point A to point B for 12 hours. It's much more local focus. We may only run 10 or 20 minutes between customers, and then we're there switching that customer for an hour, 2 hours, or something like that. But really, I think, our day is driven largely by the needs of our customers, making sure they're met, and not only in the course of that day, but which customer needs to switch at what time for whatever reason, and making sure that they have, their cars and their commodities to do the production that they need to do.
That's a really good answer. So it sounds like a lot of the days that you have, depending on what jobs need to get done, you could be going to customers A, B, and C versus D, E, and F or whatever like that. And it seems pretty hands-on. You're actually really out there doing the work and really railroading. Not that a class one isn't real railroading, but you're kind of more boots on the ground, I guess some people would say.
Yeah, I think that's right. One of the things I particularly enjoy about shortline railroading is, we get to know our customers pretty well. We're at the plant, we're at the mill, we're at the factory. And so, we're sort of that interface between the railroad and the customer. And so there's many days, that we're out there talking to the customer or spotting the right car in the right place, or, maybe shuffling cars for them based on what they need. And so there's a pretty personal relationship, that we have. We see these people every day. And I think that actually probably strengthens the model a little bit. They know us, we know them, and they know that we're going to be there to help them out when they need us. And I like that aspect of it. That really sort of puts a face with a name. It's a little bit more personalized maybe than your class one over the road mainline railroading might be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of hey, we need to go switch this industry. Oh, Bill's over there today. We'll go say hi to Bill for a little while or whatever.
Yeah, we often laugh because like when the holidays roll around, a lot of our customers will come out when the train's there, and we get all kinds of gifts, Christmas
Oh,
gifts,
that's
gift
fun.
cards, clothing, and stuff like that. So in that sense, I think it truly is like first and last mile railroading, right? Like when you see 140 car train go by you on the main line, well, every single one of those cars originated and terminates at a customer, and that's where I think it's sort of old school in that way, right? Like that, hometown local, like the train's coming by, they've got this car of that for us, and I like that feel of it.
So working with a much smaller company like your Shortline, I guess the work-life balance would be a lot different than what you would get at some other railroads per se.
I think it can be, I think to some degree, railroading is railroading, right? And, one of the things that is true, I think, of any railroad that is often hard for like non-railroad folks to understand is like, you don't really know when your workday is going to end most of the time. So, I can go in and clock in, and I may be there for 5 hours one day. I might be there for the full 12 hours the next day, depending on how things go. So, yeah, in my time, I've worked day shift, evening shift, night shift, holidays, weekends. I think that is part of railroading, whether it's your regular job or maybe an extra job or
You get that
picking up
everywhere, I guess.
yeah, work train, things like that. But, one of the things now, and our short line is seniority based, much like your class one is, but it's a little more loose. We're flexible. So like at this point in time with a little seniority, I'm on a real regular Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. start, and as a person with a family, that regularity is nice. Does it get you out of working holidays? Not always. Does it get you out of working, long days or nights? Most of the time, yes, not always. So, you know what you sign up for, but for the most part, that regularity is pretty nice. And I think that's part of railroading, right? You put in your time, and the better your schedule gets in time with seniority, picking your jobs and things like that.
That makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of things that I guess you could say that are completely the same across different aspects of railroading, short lines versus class ones, et cetera. And there's a lot of things that might be different. So that's a really good explanation for some people who might not be as familiar with some of those kind of day-to-day aspects of it, like we've been talking about. So to get to where you started, you said you started as a conductor, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And, for me, railroading was a bit of a second career. I was in a totally different field for about 15 years. I grew up around trains. My grandfather was a 40-year railroader. And so I sort of decided, I guess my wife would probably say it's a midlife crisis, or it was. I disagree, more like following your passion. So, yeah, I hired out as a freight conductor. Got qualified there, worked a variety of jobs on our railroad, days, nights, and things like that. And as sort of got very comfortable doing that, and very qualified, I think on the jobs I was doing, I had the chance to become a student engineer and work on getting my engineer's license, and sort of adding that to the repertoire. And it's one of those things, a lot of people think, becoming an engineer is like making it. I enjoy freight conducting just as much as I like, running the train or running the engine.
Of
So for
course.
me, being dual qualified is really nice. It's flexibility, and so you can be out switching cars one day and then running the engine the next day. I like that variety, and I think, the more versatile you are as a railroader, the better railroader you are. Good conductors make good engineers. Good engineers are able to help their conductor and help I guess operate the train safely in a way that helps them out, help them come up with good switching moves. And and give them what they need when they're out there on the ground. So, I always think of a crew, particularly on the freight side, it's a team, right? And you're only as strong as your relationship with your teammate, and how you have each other's backs, help each other out, and do your work safely and efficiently.
That's a really good answer. I love that. So you said this is your kind of your second career. What was your path like to get into the starting point of your second career?
Yeah, great question. So, I had some friends that worked on the railroad, and that I would talk about, railroading or trains with, and one of them finally said, you should think about coming over. It seems like you're really interested, and my first sort of reaction was like, I'm not gonna, become a railroader at this point in life, and the more I thought about it, I was like, I'll give it a shot. And, luckily with some good references and a couple, personal connections, I was able to get hired. And, I just really loved it right from the bat. I like working outside. I like the challenge of it. I like the variety. No 2 days are the same. And so, a lot of work at the beginning for sure to learn the industry and get qualified, but hard work pays off. And that's sort of how I got started.
No, this has been great so far. I've got just one more kind of parting question to ask you. Is there any piece of advice or any kind of a pointer or just insight that you would be interested in giving that we haven't mentioned already to somebody who's either maybe looking to get into the industry kind of at that ground level like we talked about, or maybe somebody who is already in the industry and looking for new and fresh insight? Is there anything that we haven't talked about already that you would like to make sure to pass on?
Yeah, great question, Glenn. I would say two things come to mind. The first of which is, if you're on sort of the periphery of railroading, whether it's, you're a rail fan or you're just interested, I think one thing to know is that, railroading is not necessarily always glamorous, right? There's days that it's sunny and 72 and, you're riding around on the train and waving to people, and that's a great side of it. We love that side of it, but it can also be grueling, and it's physically demanding work, especially on the freight side. So, when you're out switching cars at 3 o'clock in the morning, pitch black, and 35-degree rain by yourself, that's less glamorous for sure. And so just go in with eyes wide open and know that there's, like any career, like any job, I think there's great days, there's great moments, there's more challenging moments, but you take it all. It's all part of it. So just be prepared for that, and knowing that that's a reality of the job. A lot of people that I think are good railroaders and have made a career out of it, embrace those moments, right? And so it's what you make of it. It's having the right gear, the right clothing, and the right attitude, and finding what you love in that moment. So that's the first piece of advice. The second one, I think, is railroading has been around for a long time, and often the best way to learn things is to work with, be trained by, and really take advice from the more senior folks that you're working with, right? That have been doing this for 10, 20, 30 years. That's how railroading gets passed down. And I think the more open you are to listening, learning, watching, the better off you're going to do as a railroader. And the stronger, network you have, connections, relationships you have with those folks, the more you're going to benefit from that knowledge as it gets passed down, from one person to the next, one generation on to the next generation of railroaders. So there's a plug for NGR as well. But those would be my big two pieces of advice. And, the attitude makes the biggest difference. You go in with the right attitude, you go in to do your best job that you can do every day, and do it safely. And it's a really fun and rewarding career.
Absolutely. That's a really good answer, Noah. This has been great. Thank you for your time in recording this video. And thank you, the viewers, for joining us here for this installment of Day in the Life. This is, once again, the kind of bite-sized portions of content where we bring in people from the industry to elevate fresh perspectives and fresh ideas. For more rail and in preservation industry insight like this and more, please subscribe to the Next Generation Railroaders YouTube channel here and visit our website at nextgenrr.org. Once again, thank you for watching, and thank you, Noah, for joining us.
Thanks so much, everybody. Take care, Glenn.
Take care.